Hey everyone, and welcome back to Drawing What You See. In our lesson so far, we've been following the natural progression of building a drawing, working from experimentation with different types of lines and adding primary shapes and forms together to create more complex objects. So for today's lesson, we're going to do something similar by building from general to specific, but we're going to add value today to create a sense of light and dark and shadow in our drawings that creates a real sense of space. Your drawings from today's session might look something like this. For today's lesson, you'll need a pencil, a piece of paper, and an eraser, just in case, as well as an interesting object to draw. Pause the video now and go and collect your objects and materials, and I'll meet you at your workstation. All right, so I found my object. I have this bear here that I'm really interested in, and it's got some nice surface texture and some pretty interesting details. So I'm really excited to get started with my drawing. I'm just gonna set him on the table in front of me so I can see the whole object. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow along with the blocking in process from last week, right? We start a block in by drawing our general outline shapes around the subject. Draw with straight lines right now, even if there are some curved edges. And you're going to draw as big as you can on your page. So let's try not to put our object down on the table this week. We're just going to do this block in with our eyes and just the object itself, okay? I know last week we talked about blocking in shadows a little bit, and we're gonna do that in just a minute. So just do the outer edges of your object here. It's okay if you make a little bit of a mistake as you're searching for these lines. You can always just go in, take your eraser, and hit that edge so you don't get confused later on. All right. So at any time, if you need to pause the video to catch up, please do. Once you have blocked in the outside shape or the outline of the object, the second step is to start to get a little bit more detail in your drawing by dividing that larger shape into some smaller shapes and angles using smaller lines. Okay, so in this stage, I might start to notice that the object is creating a shadow. Okay, this is where I'm going to block in my bear's forehead. Sort of looks like a little bit of a triangle here, not quite a triangle. Block in his ears. Okay, so adding some smaller shapes to my overall outline. And I'll start to just gently curve the shoulder where it curves, right? And curve his elbow back to where his hand is. And start to draw just the very basic inner details. And I can always make adjustments, right? So if you notice that you've got a line that's not quite in the right spot, don't worry, just put it in the right spot. That's the wonderful thing about drawing, right? It's almost like an investigation. That's why we draw, to learn about our subjects. And the more you're willing to be flexible and keep checking and double checking, the more you're going to get out of your drawings. Here we go, a little bit more of an angle on that leg. Yep. All the way up here. So if you notice any shadows being cast, I also want you to put those in this stage, okay? So I'm gonna keep drawing in double time here, and you're welcome to watch as long as you need to feel comfortable. And then once you feel comfortable, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and catch up with me by adding these contours to your drawing, okay? All of the outer edges, all of the details, go ahead and add those in. All right, now that we have a detailed outline, we can start to add our values in, or our shading. And this is a lot like coloring in a coloring book, other than the fact that we want to keep our values light to start with. Okay, there's a few different ways to add value, and each artist has their own preference, so you'll just have to figure out what you like to do by practicing. So I'm going to show you a couple techniques up here at the top of my page, and then you can try a couple out as we go. Okay, so we can add value by cross-hatching. We talked about this a little bit in our very first lesson, but what cross-hatching is you basically just create a series of lines that are parallel to each other, right? And then change directions at a 90-degree angle and go back over the top, right? And then you can change directions again if you like. And wherever you layer up your lines, you'll notice that your pencil mark gets darker and darker and darker and darker, right? And this is what we call value. So this is one way that you can create shadows, by cross-hatching, switching directions, and continuing to make those parallel lines over and over and over again with the buildup of a ton of layers. We can also add value by something called scumbling, and this one's pretty fun because you basically get to squiggle over your drawing, okay? So you're going to do the same thing in theory, okay? But what you're going to do is you're going to create these kind of snaky, squiggly marks, and where there's less marks, there's more white of the paper. That's going to represent, or that's going to be a placeholder for where the light is touching your object, right? So wherever there's a shadow, you're going to get your scumbles going, maybe even smaller, right? And you can even press harder here. The harder you press with your pencil, the more of the pencil lead is going to transfer to the paper, and the darker your mark is going to be. Okay, so if I wanted to create this light value, I would leave the paper showing through. Then I've got a middle range value here, right, where I've got some scumbles, but you can still see a lot of the white of the paper. And then I might get really, really dark and press really, really hard on the bottom to create a shadow. Okay. Another way you can create value is by blending. And so what you'll do is you'll start either by cross-hatching or by scumbling, and then you can actually take your finger or a piece of paper towel or a napkin to sort of start blending those marks together. And you'll notice that the pencil can pretty easily be pushed around your page. You're going to get your finger a little dirty. So if you want to have some wipes right by your workstation, that can be handy too. But I really like this way of blending because it makes me feel like I can reach out and touch my drawing. And it helps me understand how the shadow reacts and interacts with the surface that it's on. Okay, so let's try. You can practice, experiment with some cross-hatching. Hopefully you might have been drawing right along with me there, okay? But if you need to pause the video and practice some of these different techniques, the cross-hatch or the scumbling or the blending, go ahead and do that now. So once you've experimented with your cross-hatching, your scumbling, or your blending, what we can do is start to slowly add values lightly to our outline. It's easier to add more than it is to erase, okay? So if you don't get too dark too fast, you don't have to worry about whether you're going to be able to get rid of your pencil marks or not. So where the objects are the brightest, or where the light hits the objects, you're going to leave the white of your paper showing. And then the shadows that you've outlined already from outlining your object with your primary shapes and forms, those are probably going to be your darkest shadow or your darkest value, okay? So where they're darkest, layer up your pencil in a ton of different layers like we did here. And that's going to create a rich sense of value. As you work, you might need to adjust or change where you've added value, because one value can affect the value next to it, okay? So if something is super dark, then the light spot next to it might appear even lighter, like his leg here, right? So if something's really light, even a middle tone gray or a medium gray can seem really dark next to it, okay? So what I want you to do is keep working all the way around your drawing until all the light areas you see out in front of you on your object are light or bright, and all the middle grays are middle grays, and all the dark areas appear nice and dark. So remember, you can return to the video as many times as you like. You can pause and play at any time. If you need to draw with me as you work, okay? And what I'd like you to do is continue this drawing over the course of the week. Should be nice and big for you on your page, right? And there's a lot of detail in here, and this is going to take a lot of practice. So if you finish up this drawing and you want to do another one, that's great. Can you use maybe the same object, but can you light it in a new way? So maybe you put a lamp next to your object on the tabletop work surface that you're working on. Or could you maybe like turn off all the lights in your house and use a flashlight? What kind of shadows and values could you get doing that? So I'm going to keep drawing here for just a minute. And I'm going to switch to double time. And again, you can watch as long as you want until you feel confident. And then you can go ahead and turn off the video and keep working all week long on adding these values in. Adding the lights where you see them, using your different techniques. Another great thing to do to keep working with value is if you decided that you were doing cross-hatching for this drawing, you might try exactly the same drawing again, but do the scumbles, do the squiggles, and see where that gets you. Okay? All right, I hope you enjoyed this lesson and continue to add value to your drawings over the course of the week, and I'll see you next week